The moment my sister-in-law let her father take credit for the wedding I had largely funded, I was standing 6 feet away, holding a glass of sparkling water I hadn't touched, doing the math I'd already done 100 times. $22,000. That's what I had wired to the venue the previous spring. Cleaned out the savings account I'd been building since I was 24, handed it over without a single condition attached. And there I stood, being described by my brother's new father-in-law as one of the guests from the groom's side. That moment wasn't even the worst of it. Let me go back to where it started. My brother has always been the one who needed a little extra help. That's not a criticism. It's just the shape of our family. He's warm and funny and genuinely good-natured, and he's also the kind of person who assumes things will work out and then looks around in mild surprise when they don't. I was the one who made the lists, tracked the deadlines, showed up 15 minutes early to everything. He was the one who made everyone laugh at dinner and somehow lost 3 debit cards in a single calendar year. I covered for him more times than I can count. Small things at first. His half of a phone bill when he was between jobs, a tank of gas, a month of groceries when rent was tight. I didn't think of it as a pattern. I just thought I was being a good sister. By the time he met Tamara, I had a stable job, physical therapy aide at an outpatient clinic, and a modest savings account I was quietly proud of. He'd been with her 2 years when he called me on a Tuesday evening, voice lower than usual, and explained the situation. They'd found the venue, the one Tamara had always dreamed about, a renovated barn outside Asheville, exposed beams and string lights, and a meadow out back for the ceremony. It was exactly what she'd wanted. They were $22,000 short on the deposit and catering contract combined. He didn't ask me outright. He just explained, carefully and thoroughly, in the way people do when they want you to offer. And I did. I said, "Let me help." He got quiet in that particular way that means relief flooding through you, then said, "Are you sure?" I said yes, because I was. He was my brother, he was happy, and I wanted him to stay that way. Tamara called me the next morning before I'd finished my coffee. She was crying, the good kind, overwhelmed and grateful. She said she couldn't believe I would do something like that for them, that I was the most generous person she'd ever met, that she hoped one day she could do something for me that came even close to what this meant. I believed every word. I want to be honest about that. I believed her completely. I transferred the money in 2 installments. I talked to the venue coordinator directly, spent 3 lunch breaks on the phone negotiating a small discount on the bar package. I helped them draft vendor communication emails. I reviewed the catering contract. I was, in every practical sense, a co-planner of this wedding, even if my name wasn't in any official capacity. What I didn't understand yet was that my name wouldn't end up anywhere at all. The wedding was in October. Asheville was beautiful that time of year, the leaves just starting to turn, the meadow looking like something out of a magazine. I wore a deep green dress I'd bought in August and spent too much on. I did my hair. I smiled in the photos. I watched my brother cry when Tamara walked down the aisle. And I cried a little too, because that part was real and good, and I was genuinely happy. The reception was where it came apart. It happened gradually, the way the worst things do. First, Tamara's mother introduced me to a table of college friends as one of the guests from the groom's side. Not as his sister, not by name, just a category. I let it go. Weddings are hectic. People lose track of things. Then came the toasts. Her father went first. He's a big man with a loud voice, and the particular confidence of someone who's never been asked to lower it. He spoke for nearly 10 minutes about everything he and his wife had sacrificed for this day. How they'd given their daughter the wedding she deserved. How watching her at the altar was the culmination of all they'd worked for. He named the venue specifically. He described the catering, the flowers, the string lights, and the rafters. He said, "We spared no expense." I stared at my plate. My brother's toast followed. Sweet, a little rambling, very him. He thanked Tamara's parents at length. He thanked my mother. Then he said, "And to everyone else who helped make tonight possible, you know who you are." That was it. That was my acknowledgement. You know who you are. I smiled because cameras were pointed at that table. And because what else do you do? The moment, that crystallized everything came near the end of the evening. I was standing by the dessert table when one of Tamara's friends drifted up beside me and said, "This venue is unbelievable. Do you know how they pulled it off?" Before I could answer, Tamara materialized from somewhere to my left, slipped her arm around her friend's shoulders, and said, "My parents were absolutely incredible. They made it happen." She didn't look at me, not once. I drove home alone that night. 2.5 hours with the radio on and no memory of what was playing. Just the dark of the highway and my hands on the wheel, and this silence in my chest that felt like the moment before you fully understand something bad. I didn't cry until I got inside. The weeks that followed were strange in their sameness. My brother texted honeymoon photos. My mother asked if I'd had a good time. Tamara posted her first wedding recap. A long, beautiful caption about the day, the details, the feeling. She thanked her parents by name. She thanked the florist. She thanked the venue coordinator by first name, specifically. I scrolled to the bottom 3 times. My name wasn't there. I put my phone down and sat on my kitchen floor. Not dramatic, just sat there with my back against the cabinet, trying to figure out how much of what I was feeling was legitimate and how much was me being too much. Too needy. Too, whatever you call a person who gives everything, and then resents not being thanked for it. But here's what I kept coming back to. I hadn't asked to be celebrated. I hadn't asked for a speech, or a photo credit, or a single line in a caption. I'd asked for nothing, and nothing is exactly what I got, except it didn't feel like nothing. It felt like erasure, which is a completely different thing. I kept helping long after I should have questioned it. I know that's the part people will wonder about. Why did I stay quiet? Why did I keep giving, even when I could see the shape of things? The honest answer is that I kept thinking this time would be different, that one more act of generosity would finally make them see me as part of the family, rather than a function of it. That hope is its own kind of trap, and I walked into it with my eyes open. I texted my brother 3 weeks after the wedding, gentle as I could make it. I said, I'd noticed my name wasn't in any of the thank yous, and I wasn't trying to make it a big thing, but it had hurt a little, and I wanted him to know. He replied 4 hours later. He said Tamara had been overwhelmed and that the toasts weren't scripted down to the word, and of course they were grateful. Didn't I know that? He ended with, "Can you just let this one go? She's trying." I said, "Okay, I let it go, or I tried to." Then my coworker Blythe sent me a screenshot. Blythe and Tamara had been in the same yoga class for about a year. One of those accidental overlaps that happen in mid-sized cities where everyone shares 3 degrees of separation. They weren't close, just friendly enough to follow each other and occasionally DM. What Blythe forwarded me was a message Tamara had sent to a group of mutual acquaintances. People who knew both of us loosely, the way you know people in your late 20s when social circles are still half-formed. The message said she wanted to share something privately, that she hoped everyone would understand. It said I had been making comments about the wedding that she found hurtful, that I seemed to struggle with accepting that it was her and my brother's day, not mine, that she had tried to be patient with my behavior, but it had been a lot to manage, and she was finding it difficult to navigate without causing more drama. I read it twice, then a third time. I kept waiting for a part that made sense. I had sent one gentle text to my brother about the thank yous. That was the entire body of evidence behind the phrase, "a lot to manage." Somehow that had been translated, in Tamara's retelling, into something that required management, that needed to be disclosed to a group of people, that positioned me as unstable. Blythe added below the screenshot. I didn't know what she was talking about, but it felt like something you should see. I sat with that for 2 days before I opened the folder. I have a habit, probably anxiety adjacent, the kind that develops when you grow up feeling like documentation is the only thing standing between you and being misremembered. I keep records, bank confirmations, texts, email chains, not because I plan to use them, just because deleting them felt wrong. That folder was 2 years old by then. It had the wire transfer confirmations. It had the email thread with the venue coordinator where I'd negotiated the catering package. It had 14 texts from Tamara, ranging from "you are literally an angel" to a long message about centerpiece options she'd wanted my opinion on. From the months when I was actively, enthusiastically involved in planning a wedding I eventually wasn't permitted to exist at. I also remembered a voice memo. The day I agreed to transfer the money, my aunt had been at my mother's house. She'd been there for a visit when my brother called, and she'd overheard enough to understand what was happening. Later, in the kitchen, she'd pulled me aside and said quietly, "You're a good kid. I just hope they remember it." That night, I'd recorded a voice memo as a kind of timestamp for myself. Said the amount out loud. Said who I was giving it to and why. My aunt was audible in the background the whole time, washing dishes, occasionally adding a word or two. I called my aunt the next morning. She picked up on the second ring, and I hadn't gotten through half a sentence before she said, "I've been waiting for you to call." She'd seen the Instagram posts. She'd done her own math. She said simply, "Tell me what you need." She came over that afternoon with coffee cake from the bakery near her apartment, and we sat at my kitchen table for 3 hours. We talked about everything, not just the wedding, but the years before it. All the times I'd quietly covered gaps and made myself invisible about it, because acknowledging the help felt like asking for too much, and I hadn't wanted to seem like I was keeping score. She said she'd watched it from a distance and worried, but hadn't wanted to push. "I should have said something earlier," she told me. "I'm sorry I didn't." Before she left, she said something I keep coming back to. She said, "People only rewrite history when they're afraid of the truth," which means the truth is still out there. It doesn't disappear just because they stopped acknowledging it. That night, I wrote a message to the family group chat, just the immediate family, my mother, my brother, 2 aunts, a cousin. I didn't write a paragraph. No explanation, no preamble. I wrote, "I want to share something, because I think the truth matters." Then I attached 3 things. The wire transfer confirmation for $22,000. The text thread with Tamara that included her writing, "You are literally saving our wedding. I will owe you forever." And the screenshot of the message she'd sent to our mutual acquaintances, describing my behavior as a lot to manage. I added one line at the bottom. "I never asked to be celebrated. I just didn't expect to be erased." Then I put the phone face down and went to make tea. The chat went silent for a long time. My mother called. Then my brother called. I let both ring. My aunt posted a single message to the group. "She's telling the truth. I was there when she agreed to the transfer. I heard the entire conversation." I checked the chat around midnight. My brother had seen everything. My mother had seen everything. Nobody had replied. The next morning, I posted on Reddit. I've read those forums for years. The family threads, the places where people say things they can't say anywhere else. I made a throwaway account and wrote everything out in plain, factual language. The $22,000. The erasure at the reception. The Instagram posts crediting only her parents. The message to our mutual friends characterizing me as unstable. I ended with a line I'd been sitting with for days. "The hardest part isn't the money. It's realizing they never saw me as family. They saw me as a resource. There's a significant difference." I hit post and closed the app. I opened it 40 minutes later to 800 upvotes. By evening, thousands. The comments were long and specific and thoughtful, in a way I hadn't anticipated. People sharing parallel versions of the same story, asking careful questions, offering perspective with real weight behind it. Someone said, "This is textbook financial exploitation, dressed in the language of family obligation." Someone quoted the line about being seen as a resource and wrote, "Clip this. This is the clarity you've been circling for years, without being able to name it." My brother texted the following afternoon, "We need to talk. This isn't fair to Tamara." I read it, set my phone down, and went for a walk. My mother called the next morning. Her measured voice. The one that sounds like patience, but is actually performance. She said she wished I hadn't posted publicly, that this was a family matter, that I was putting my brother in an impossible position, that Tamara was sensitive, and this wasn't the right way to handle things. I said, "What was the right way, Mom?" I tried the quiet way. I texted him and he told me to let it go. How many times was I supposed to do that? She was quiet for a moment. Then, "You always have to push things." I said, I gave $22,000 to a wedding I wasn't allowed to exist at. I don't think I was the one who was pushing. She didn't answer that. We stayed on the phone in silence for a little while, and then I said I loved her, and I hung up. A week passed. Tamara's Instagram went quiet. No new posts, comments locked on the wedding content. My brother's last message sat unread. I didn't feel triumphant about any of it. Mostly I felt tired, and underneath the tired, something thinner and cleaner, like air after a long rain. My aunt checked in every few days. No advice, just presence. A text saying she was thinking of me. A container of soup left outside my door one evening with a note taped to the lid. "You did the right thing. Proud of you." I kept that note on my counter for 2 weeks before I finally moved it. 6 weeks after the Reddit post, my brother reached out again. The tone had shifted, quieter, less defensive. He said he was sorry I'd felt overlooked. He said he should have spoken up at the reception, and he hadn't, and he knew that. He didn't mention Tamara, didn't explain or excuse, just said he was sorry. I sat with that for a long time before I replied. I told him I wasn't trying to blow up his marriage. I told him what I needed him to understand was simple. I had given a significant part of my savings to something I believed in. And what I deserved in return wasn't gratitude or public recognition, just honesty. The truth of what had actually happened. Instead, I got a rewritten story where I didn't exist. He wrote back, "You're right. I don't know how to fix it yet, but you're right." It wasn't an ending. It wasn't resolution in the way that word implies. Clean, complete, returned to baseline. But it was something real. A thin thread of honesty in a situation that had been built almost entirely out of its absence. I made coffee and sat at the window for a while. The street outside was ordinary and bright, the kind of morning that doesn't demand anything. My phone was on the counter, face down, and for once I didn't feel the pull to check it constantly. I set up a separate savings account shortly after. Started moving money in steadily, rebuilding what I'd given away. My clinic offered me a lead position on a new outpatient program they were expanding. More responsibility, more purpose. And I said yes without the usual second guessing. I started cooking more at home. Sleeping better. Going to the farmer's market on Saturday mornings, the way I'd been meaning to for 2 years. I stopped waiting for Tamara to acknowledge what she'd done. That silence used to feel like something that needed to be resolved. A wound that required a specific response to heal. Now it just felt like information. She had made choices. I had made choices. And the rest of it was just the shape of consequences, finding their natural form. For most of my adult life, I told myself that being useful was the same as being loved. That showing up in practical ways, money, logistics, problem solving, quiet reliability, was its own language of devotion, and that love didn't always need to be spoken to be real. I still believe parts of that. Generosity is real. Showing up is real. But I've learned to tell the difference between giving freely and giving in the hope that this time, finally, they'll see you. One of those is love. The other is a way of disappearing slowly, one transfer at a time, until you look up one day and realize you've funded a story you aren't even a character in. I'm not disappearing anymore. That's not a declaration of war. It's not even particularly dramatic. It's just the quietest and most important decision I've made in a long time. To take up the space I've always been entitled to, and to stop shrinking myself to make other people's stories easier to tell. I was here. I mattered. And unlike some things in this story, those are facts no one can revise.